there are two quotes, one by mystic poet Tagore and the other by Krishnamurti, and I want to talk to them a little bit. The first one is, to know God, you must welcome everything. And the second one is, I don't mind what happens. I really have digested these over the years and taken them as profound statements from two masters. The second one particularly impacted me in an incredible way and still does to this day. And the thing is, when we hear these two statements, to welcome God, to know God, you must welcome everything, and I don't mind what happens. There's such a, and again, particularly the second one, such an insult to the ego, to the self, that it's easily dismissed. And even on the level of spiritual freedom and realization, it's mesmerizingly out of reach. And so I wanted to, hold on, they're in the tunnel. I wanted to invite the possibility that these two statements aren't like the sword of Damocles measuring our incapability or how short we are of these two great measures, but actually these are invitations to ongoing inquiry. And if we stop seeing them as simply the measures of us, and we see them as invitations to inquiry, then something maybe starts to shift in us. When we can allow them to guide us, allow them to support us, allow them to be a way of us really looking at ourselves. Because when I really got that second statement, the words of Krishnamurti, I asked myself, well, if they're the words of a master, and I'm trying to learn some kind of mastery, then where is it within me that I really do mind what happens? And what am I going to do about it? And if I really want to know God, what can't I welcome? And why not? And there we have it. Two profound invitations to inquiry. Because the ego self, the small self, the wound up, bound up self is reactive, and it lives on its reactivity. It actually survives on its reactivity. It survives on its resistance. And as long as we know ourselves as that, and that only, then we're bound and chained to that reactivity. and we become it, and we hold on to it because it is our life, because it is the measure of us. And this is such a difficult area for really to understand, to comprehend, to really deeply comprehend where we have to go and what we have to let go of in order for us to say, I don't mind what happens, is profound. Because quite honestly, we do mind what happens. And that's where I found myself. Well, I do mind what happens. What is this minding what happens? And what do we think we're going to get? You know, what benefit is there? Truly, deeply inside, apart from upholding some sense of self, what do we get by minding what happens? We get to uphold the self, don't we? The self with its vulnerable, rigid sense of its own being. See, the ego self in many ways hangs on this, doesn't it? Hangs on minding what happens. It can't welcome everything home. It just simply can't. And so, you know, and we have to go deeper, because it's not it's not the self that does it. It's not the self we're talking to. In many ways, it's not the self that I'm talking to here. So in some sort of way, shape or form, we have to go deeper than the self, deeper into the mystery, letting go of the self and all its minding and all its resistance and all its reactivity, and to begin to know ourselves as not that one. It's something much more deep, something much more vast, as if awareness itself. And yes, there is work to be done, often, on the self itself. The point of inquiry, it is the point of inquiry, that very point of inquiry, to find out the I, to see the I that says, I don't mind what happens and I can't welcome everything home because I'm full of fear, because I'm full of grievance, because I'm full of a kind of righteousness that comes from wounding or conditioning. To see this and to hold this one tenderly. I'll always come back to tenderness. Without tenderness, we become dry and cold, and our awakening has got no real heart and soul in it, and that's not what this is about at all. But to see the one that wants to hang on, that finds its survival, that finds its meaning, that finds its kind of life in the rigidity, in the argument, in the righteousness, in the fight, in the struggle, in the reactivity, in the minding what happens, and to seek over time in slow ways and in fast ways, in sudden epiphanies and gradual realizations, and a sort of erosion that takes place with great persistence, to see what it is to let go of that one. Again and again and again. The path of erosion that I talk about, the gradual path. And that's the path of inquiry, path of the invitation to inquiry, to see again and again and again where we move towards very much minding what happens. And it's a moot point because we have to go beyond the self. You know, the self is in the world and we're going to get insulted by things and things are going to be difficult and, you know, we're going to meet injustice and suffering. There must be a great tenderness to all these things, both our own suffering and particularly the suffering of others and the suffering of animals and all this cruelty that goes on. So I'm not coldly dismissing those qualities, but I am saying there's more love can be offered by welcoming all of that into the being that we are. Welcoming all that into our beingness. And that very act of welcoming everything into our beingness almost says, I don't mind what happens on the level of reactive self. It's like, and I think I've talked about this before, allowing everything in. Allowing everything in, to pour in. The world of our experience, the external world and the internal world, is longing to pour into us so it can be healed and pour through us. This is an important point because this speaks to our capacity to digest and absorb and eliminate. And I have talked about this before, I think. We are complex, fractal holographic beings. The cells in our bodies, the digestive system that we have, and we ourselves, in many ways, are designed to do the same thing. To allow the world to enter, to absorb what we can of the goodness, and to eliminate, oh, my eyes are running, and to eliminate that which doesn't serve us. We're healers, really. Born healers. But we forget and we don't know. We lose our digestive capacity. So we become reactive and constricted and dehydrated and stuck and toxic. Cellular function diminishes, digestive function diminishes, and our function diminishes, so we can't fully digest the world. but to welcome everything is to fully digest the world. And if we do that, then the world being the world of our experience as much as the world outside, the world inside, our own pain, our own grievance, our own wound, our own hurt, to let go of it all again and again, not by pushing it away, but by letting it into us. This is profound. Everything about this conversation is profound. So, I'm going to leave it there while I try and get a little bit warm. Tagore said, to welcome God. No, Tagore said, to know God you must welcome everything. And the great Krishnamurti said, I don't mind what happens. Is it possible for us to take those two profound lines of wisdom and use them as an ongoing inquiry into how we show up in life again and again and again in every experience of our lives?